In part 1, I shared the 40 years of silence that followed my childhood in New England. By 2018, I thought I'd finally earned the right to turn that noise off. My husband and I moved 1,000 miles south to a 30-acre retirement hobby farm in a tiny town of 300. This was supposed to be our happily ever after. But as I started to get my bearings, I realized there was something else out there. Something that turned my dream into a recurring nightmare. For the first few years, memories I had blocked out for decades began flooding back. The farm was forcing me to finally look at what I'd buried. I had gone from a child who loved the woods to an adult who practiced total avoidance, and I was about to find out why. The property featured a massive, scary old barn that felt like a sanctuary for someone else. Every time I stepped inside, the air felt thick, like I was being watched from the shadows of the rafters. That barn eventually went down, and it went down fast, almost like the land needed it gone. Then there was the holler. It was beautiful, almost park-like, with a natural spring. I remember trying to be brave, walking down there to claim my own land, but the feeling was overwhelming. I felt encroached upon, like I was being snuck up on from every angle. I reached a point where I simply would not go in there alone. The beauty of the spring couldn't mask the fact that I wasn't the only one there. The fear for my animals was constant. One night I let the dogs out and they raced straight to the back fence. That's when the whooping began, loud, rhythmic, and coming from the darkness of the holler. Around that same time, our pear tree was being raided. I'd find it almost picked clean, branches snapped in ways a deer simply couldn't do. I think my dogs caught them in the act that night. It felt like a confrontation was brewing. I was terrified my 4 Great Pyrenees were going to get hurt or killed trying to protect us. No matter where I stood on my 30 acres, I felt stared at constantly. I became obsessed with security. I had spotlights on all 4 sides of the house burning all night long. I lined the fences with solar lights. From the air, it must have looked like an airport. I started carrying a gun a lot. Even just to walk to the mailbox, I felt I needed that weight to have a fighting chance. But the lights only made the shadows darker, and the gun couldn't shoot the heaviness. I was living in a tactical environment, vibrating with a level of hypervigilance that no amount of equipment could soothe. The isolation of those years was made harder because I was the only one seeing it. My husband, an avid hunter with an I won't believe it until I see it mentality, was the reason I started taking pictures in the first place. I needed to give him his proof. For a long time, I was met with lame excuses for everything I was experiencing. I was told I was crazy, or that there was a logical explanation for the rocks, the whoops, and the heaviness. It took a huge toll on me to be living in a state of constant terror while the person closest to you tells you it isn't real. That is an exhausting way to exist. In 2025, I started gathering photos just to reclaim my sanity. It took a massive amount of documentation to finally convince him, but it was worth it for the validation alone. To finally have the person closest to me acknowledge that I wasn't losing my mind and to end the era of being told I was crazy was a massive turning point. Even now, he'd still rather not talk about what's living in our tree line. The constant fear meant I stopped sleeping. Great Pyrenees bark a lot normally, that's their job, but there is a fundamental difference between a dog barking at a deer or a coyote in the distance and the protecting the house bark. I learned the language of their barks, and when that specific alarm went off, I'd stay up all night, too rattled to even close my eyes. I'd spend those hours obsessively researching, trying to find a name for what was happening. As I spent more time on the land, I realized the activity wasn't random and had a map. On one side of the property, far away from the house, is where the mindspeak happened. After that, I was always afraid of getting too close to those fence lines. The back pasture was a different story. The air there was always cooler and extremely intense. When I was out there on the tractor, I felt like I was in a fishbowl, exposed and watched, during feeding time with the animals. That's when the visions of two juveniles belly crawling in the grass behind happened the most. Then there is a separate strip of pasture, right near their tree structures. Up there, I feel completely cut off from the safety of the house, and even the dogs. I'm just not comfortable up there. It is their space. The most unnerving part of this journey has been reviewing my own archives. Some of the videos I made years ago have become truly disturbing to me now. At the time, I was just filming my farm, completely oblivious to what was actually taking place right in front of the lens. It was only years later that I started seeing them in the footage, glimpses of figures that were cloaked and standing right there. To know you were being observed in your most private moments, and you didn't even know they were there until the camera played it back years later. It's a level of exposure that's hard to put into words. The exhaustion was bone deep. It got so bad that I couldn't stand being near my own kitchen window. Even with heavy curtains, the knowledge of that thin pane of glass between me and the dark was too much. Many nights I ended up sleeping on the couch in the living room simply because it was the only room in the house that didn't have windows. I was retreating into the core of my own home, looking for a sanctuary where I couldn't be seen. I spent years in obsessive research, but it took a dark turn into cryptid horror. As a Christian, I dove down the Nephilim and Genesis 6 rabbit holes. Nephilim in my backyard is not what you want to hear when you are already terrified. I was weaponizing my faith against myself. Every twig snap became a demonic threat. This sensationalism just gave me more reasons to hide in that windowless room. I finally reached out to a professional remote viewer, and she gave me the keys to understanding this entire experience. She told me that on this farm, these beings have been here for hundreds of years. This property is deeply special to them. It is their home. But more importantly, she said they like my energy. My own frequency and energy attract them to me. Suddenly, the threat looked completely different. I wasn't being hunted. I was being observed by neighbors who had a claim to this land long before I did, and who felt a connection to me. They weren't staying because they were at war with me. They were staying because they wanted to be near me. Through the pictures I eventually took, my entire perspective shifted. I started to see them for what they really were, individuals. I saw children, families, and clans. I saw how terrifyingly magnificent and horrifically beautiful they truly were. They weren't just shadows or monsters. They were a people living their best lives alongside mine. They weren't out to get me. They were simply existing in the same space, moving through their days with the same sense of family and belonging that I was. Seeing them as individuals, as fathers, mothers, and children, was the final piece of the puzzle that let me set my own fear down. She then helped me deconstruct my childhood. The recurring nightmares about the Sasquatch trying to tear our house apart was an unresolved territorial dispute involving our childhood home. That area near the bus stop belonged to an entity who had been affected by the creation of our lake and nearby reservoir. It simply did not want anyone there. She then brought me back to a childhood bike ride that mind speak was to protect me from something dangerous in the woods. They weren't the danger, they were warning me of it. That growl at my door on the farm? It was the same thing, protective. I'm still in recovery. I've had to unlearn fear, and that is a daily practice. Even now, there's a part of me that is afraid to open the back door at night. I still have that flash of anxiety that I'll see what I caught a glimpse of on film just last month. That female Sasquatch moving through the frame. I've accepted their presence, but I still value the boundary of that thin pane of glass. Every night, my 4 Great Pyrenees position themselves outside my bedroom. When they start barking and growling, I have to remind myself, this is a different place. I am not a child. I've noticed the dogs are friendly with them, but if they get too close to the house, the dog's loyalties shift instantly to protecting mom. But the turning point was a simple question. What are they actually doing to you? Just being present or curious isn't a crime. Will there be more misunderstandings? Most likely. I take it one day at a time and continue to try to unlearn fear. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.